Hey, today we're gonna be going out to a little flight to Vermont to drop off some packages. Boss is a little stingy, so we'll see how the weather turns out. Hopefully it'll be a nice day and it should be a nice flight. Hello? Hey Frank, what's up? Yeah, I'm looking at the GFA and everything and it's not looking very good. We have a low pressure coming from the northwest. We're expected to have some severe turbulence and thunderstorms, so I think it's a no-go today. What I'm telling you, you can't be going in this kind of weather. It'll destroy the plane, doesn't matter. You can't have that, I'm telling you, you can't. No. Sir. Okay, fine, I'll see what I can do. Bye.
They just let him go up there, and they honestly they knew it was dangerous, and they still let him go up there, and this should not have happened. And you know what, they didn't even get in trouble for it, and it's terrible. And we don't even know what to do. Our family's broken now because of them.
Hey, Vermont Tower, this is Bravo, Charlie, Quebec. Just looking at our instruments here. Our airspeed and horizontal stabilizer are not properly, and our vacuum gauge is not going in the green. What do you want me to do?
The sky is overcast and the visibility poor. That reported 8-kilometer visibility looks more like 3, and you can't judge the height of the cloud. Your altimeter says you're at 1,500 feet, but your map tells you there's local terrain as high as 1,200 feet. There might even be a tower nearby, because you're not sure just how far off course you are. But you've flown into worse weather than this, so you press on. You find yourself unconsciously easing back just a bit on the controls to clear those none-too-imaginary towers. With no warning, you're in the soup. You peer so hard into the milky white mist that your eyes hurt. You fight the feeling in your stomach. You swallow, only to find your mouth dry. Now you realize you should have waited for better weather. The meeting was important, but not that important. Somewhere a voice is saying, you should have turned back. You now have 178 seconds to live. Your aircraft feels on an even keel, but your compass turns slowly. You push your rudder pedal and add pressure to the controls to stop the turn, but this feels unnatural, so you quickly return the controls to their original position. That feels better. But now your compass is turning a little faster and your airspeed is increasing slightly. You scan your instrument panel for help, but you don't find any. It all looks unfamiliar. You're sure this is just a bad spot. You'll break out in a few minutes. But you don't have a few minutes. You now have 100 seconds to live. You glance at your altimeter and are shocked to see it unwinding. You're already down to 1,200 feet. Instinctively, you pull back on the controls, but the altimeter still unwinds. The engine is into the red, and the airspeed's almost there too. You have 45 seconds to live. Now you're sweating and shaking. There must be something wrong with the controls. Pulling back only moves that airspeed indicator deep into the red. You can hear the wind tearing at the aircraft. You have 10 seconds to live. Suddenly, you see the ground. The trees rush up at you. You can see the horizon if you turn your head far enough, but it's at an unusual angle. You're almost inverted. You open your mouth to scream.
Hi guys, so today we're talking about the accident of a Piper Cherokee 6. What the official conclusion for this report was that it was a VFR into IMC conditions, lack of night currency, inoperative DG and vacuum system, loss of control due to spatial disorientation, wing overload, and in-flight breakup, pilot error. So there were 5 people on board, everyone died.
I'm going to be talking about the aircraft that Glenn was flying. Before I start, I want to talk about Glenn's career. He was a 500-hour commercial pilot, a low-time pilot considering his hours. This was considered to be his first job, so he was new to the career. One thing that new pilots interact is they're pushy bosses. A lot of the times, pilots are pushed to go through whether it be flying the bush to deliver something, or pushing passengers saying they want to go to a destination. The key thing to note is that it's the pilot's responsibility no matter what happens, and even if the passenger wants to go, the fault always goes on the pilot. Now looking at the aircraft, he was flying a Piper Cherokee 6. This is basically a low-wing aircraft, a single engine, general aviation. It fitted 5 passengers. So on this flight, it was a full plane. Looking at the airplane, there's a few things wrong with it. For one, it was 100 hours past its maintenance, which is illegal. It would be considered a snag, unworthy. Next thing, the COM1 and NAV2 were inoperative. So he only had 2 radios, 1 radio working. Next, the vacuum gauge and the GG systems were also inoperative. So to the plane person, this means that the horizontal and a few other instruments were inoperative. This would be fine if he was doing VFR flying, but in this case, Glenn wanted to VFR, but he ended up in IFR, making the whole situation a whole new challenge.
So when they landed at their first destination, it was still VFR weather. So this flight was supposed to be VFR going and coming back. But what happened when they were about to come back was the passengers he was supposed to bring back actually got delayed, and the passengers came to the airport late. So by that time, Greg has checked the GFAs and the weather, and he knew there was some thunderstorm activity, low clouds, and then low ceiling.
As mentioned before, on Greg's flight, we know that weather was a big factor to the plane crash. The first factor was the rain fog that he encountered. He encountered heavy rain and a visibility around 3 statute miles. What it looked like for Greg was, think about driving in a car on a really rainy day. You know that the rain keeps pounding and pounding at your windshield, similar like this. So, not only is this happening, Greg was supposed to do a VFR flight. So now he's IFR, he's getting a little disoriented, but still know where he's going. He's talking to ATC, they're telling him, okay, these are your vectors, keep going what you're doing. The next factor was the cumulus clouds and severe turbulence. Now we have Greg, lots of rain, the plane is shaking up and down, and he's getting more disoriented by the second. Greg is now very concerned about this flight because he knows this is an old aircraft and it cannot take all this abuse by the thunderstorm. Next we have the thunderstorm, which is going to create a lot of turbulence, a lot of updrafts and downdrafts. The only thing a pilot can really do in this situation is just ride the thunderstorm. In this case, Greg tried to do this, but he lost control of the airplane. And looking at this picture over here, we see that the airplane is going up and down, updrafts, downdrafts, very strong, about 500 feet a second easily. And then as it's flying, he got himself into a spin. A spin is an uncontrolled maneuver, invertly going straight to the ground. As Greg's going straight to the ground, the updrafts and downdrafts actually rip his wing off the fuselage, creating him having no hope and then going into the ground. As you can see in this picture, the wing was separated by a large distance compared to the rest of the aircraft. Glenn was going from South Carolina to Virginia. During his first leg, it was fine, it was smooth sailing. The problem when he was coming back. When Glenn was coming back, he encountered severe rain, so his visibility was shot down to about 3 statute miles. As you can imagine, that is not very far when you're flying an airplane, along with the heavy rain. With the heavy rain, we have thunderstorms nearby. We had a lot of cumulus activity. What this means is a lot of unstable air, which is a lot of updrafts and downdrafts. So as you can imagine, Glenn is flying along, he gets pushed up and pushed down. Looking at his altitude, he's around 2,100 feet, which is not correct because he's going all over the place. So what Glenn was doing was correct. He was riding the thunderstorm, which is what you're supposed to do. As he's flying around, he's contacting ATC. They're telling him, okay, you're at this position, keep moving, how are you doing, are you okay? Glenn is actually spatially disoriented, because he can't see, he's in IFR conditions. As we said before, the vacuum gauges weren't working, which is what helped him. As well as the passengers are also confused and worried about their own lives, so he has that stress under his belt as well.
And just remember, we're talking about a plane over here which is about 100 hours overdue for its maintenance, and it is completely not airworthy. So,
along with this is around a 50-year-old airplane, so as you can imagine, the structure isn't what it used to be. So while this gun is flying, he notices he gets himself into a small bank. This bank then turns into a spin. And a spin, the G-forces, along with the wind shear, causes the airplane to snap off from the fuselage, and now he has no chance of recovering, and he goes straight into the ground. Later they found the one wing about 200 yards away from the actual aircraft. So as you can imagine, his wings separated and he had no chance of survival from that point.
FAA, so according to the FAA reports, it says that it was pilot error, including some of the other things which were happening at the same time. So this was actually under the table deal from this company the pilot was working for. So that played a big role because they were not maintaining their planes properly. but they were still doing charter flights, which is definitely an unsafe practice. At the same time, the pilot, it was major pilot error, which you have to agree to, that the plane was not airworthy. He shouldn't have been there in the first place. Communication plays a big role. Although the ADC personnel who were actually involved in the accident, like we're talking, the pilot, they were actually given more training, but nothing really happened afterwards. The only person who was blamed was the pilot. Because it was the under the table deal, they were not able to catch Pro Charter. They were not able to charge them for anything, as there were no records of this flight.
So we could basically conclude that it wasn't only pilot error, but a lot of small things that went wrong, such as weather, a loss of communication, the aircraft not being up to date, and a few other things. So as we can say, this was pilot error along with many other things.
So what we should all know is take responsibility as pilots. Make sure the plane's airworthy. Make sure you're doing the right thing, because at the end of the day, it's your life and the life of the other passengers you're flying with.
Patil, you're a pilot, correct?
Yes.
What is your views on pilot safety?
Most important thing?
Do you believe in this accident it was pilot's error or the company's error?
Pilot error. You can't go flying if the weather's bad and if you don't have airmanship. It's basic law.
What did you believe was incorrect what he did?
He knew the weather was bad, he still went up. He knew the aircraft wasn't airworthy, he still went up. That's wrong.
What would you do in his position?
I wouldn't go up.
Even if the boss was interrogating you to go up?
Yes.
Even if you had to quit your job?
It's my life over career. If you die, you don't have a life, so it doesn't matter. It's your fault.
Action.
So, Mr. Kulkarni, in this accident, what do you think was the main cause? Do you think we can blame it on the pilot error, or the other factors have to be considered as well?
I think there are three factors that have to be that can be blamed for the entire accident. So, firstly, the pilot was obviously partly to blame. He didn't follow a flight plan. He took off knowing that the vacuum system on the plane was not working, and he was putting 5 people's lives at risk by doing that. He also took off knowing that the weather was probably not going to be the greatest, and given the fact that he didn't have his vacuum instruments working and the weather was going to get bad, it was probably a really bad idea to go into weather where he might have to fly IFR. Now, I also think the air traffic controller that he talked to on his flight should have mentioned to him that the weather was deteriorating below VFR minimums. So, had he mentioned it to the pilot, maybe the pilot would have reconsidered his plans. But then again, it's not the responsibility of the air traffic controller to let the pilot know. He told him that there was going to be rain and some low clouds in the direction that he was going, but had he mentioned to him that the VFR minimums would not be there for him, maybe the pilot would have done something differently. And finally, I think the aircraft company that was hiring this pilot really was to blame as well as the pilot, because they weren't doing all the paperwork for the plane. They were not doing proper maintenance. As I said, the vacuum system wasn't properly working, which can be very dangerous in IFR situations. And yeah, they hadn't made the pilot file a flight plan, and while the pilot should have known, the aircraft company should have been checking to make sure that it was happening. And yeah.